Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Shovel Knight Plague of Shadows. In the last part, we finished off the first portion of the world map, but now we're quickly going back into the Forest of Fishing to grab the one cipher coin we missed here last time. Like I mentioned, it's right at that waterfall on the second screen. And I think, if memory serves, this is a cipher coin I missed on my first playthrough as well, so this is a consistent problem with me. There's only a couple of cipher coins that are hidden in, like, really nasty places throughout the game, thankfully, but this is consistently one of them, because it's just so easy to miss because of where your eyes are going on the screen. With that said, now I need to go through the rest of this level, so we're just going to jump cut to the end here, and head on to our first level of the second portion, which you can go after any of them in any order. I prefer to go to the Explodatorium first, though, because, well, it's our own level, we might as well, right? What do you have to say here, minion? Ah, geez, Plague Knight, we, real screwed up. You left us in charge, we failed you, everything's going haywire, and there's an intruder afoot. Watch out. An intruder? So, I actually was really excited to get to this level on my first playthrough because I figured it being Plague Knight's own level, it'd be probably the most changed out of the set. But they really don't do that, and it's like, I think one of the biggest missed opportunities in the entire expansion. But I've harped enough about that. Let's talk about something a little more different. Let's talk about the new items we've unlocked now that we're at research level 2 at this point. Starting off with the casings, the only new one you can get is the orbit casing, which makes the bomb spin around you in a circle, almost like a shield from a Mega Man game, and it completely ignores walls, so you can use that to just kind of move on and ignore enemies in some regards. For the powder, there's the cluster powder, which forms several explosions in a smaller area, if you can use it right. And I honestly do like it as well. I prefer the component powder, but it's a good one. For the fuse, there's the remote fuse, which works like a remote bomb from a Bomberman game. You press the button again to make it explode when you want to. So if you're in certain areas where there's enemies that patrol, like these rats, you could use that to just kind of let them walk into their own demise in a regard. But if using it against boss fights is really awkward, and I don't really recommend it for that. And on the bursts, the new one is the Frost Burst, which actually showed off at the end of last part. While you're launching through the air, it makes you drop small ice projectiles at certain periods. This could be useful against certain boss fights. I don't think it's that good against certain enemies, but it's not my favorite all the same. Again, I really just tend to stick with the float burst. The final burst that you can get is another one I use every now and then, casually, but I don't really use it much in this playthrough in particular. If there's something I think this expansion needed in retrospect, it's the ability to map, like, 3 or 4 different presets of bomb setups so that I can quickly swap between, like, my boss killer, my standard enemy setup, and then, like, a platforming setup. But that's not there. You can probably use the L2 and R2 buttons for that, because from memory, they don't really do much in the game to begin with. It's just kind of a missed opportunity. Like, if there's anything, if this was treated more like Spectre of Torment and King of Cards, that they would probably have it, is that, too. It's just kind of a shame. Because that would encourage more experimentation than having to just swap between them through the entire little R menu or select button menu at will. Because both of those take just a little bit too long. Because when you're using, like, the R button menu to swap your casings and all that, you have to do it for each button one at a time, and in one direction. So, like, say you scroll past the component powder, for instance. You have to go all the way back through the admittedly small selection of powders to get back to it, but it's enough of a pain in the ass that, especially on a first playthrough, you're probably going to notice it. Either way, here we are at the end of the news section for Plague Knight, where we're going to get ourselves Shovel Knight's relic. And admittedly, this is one of the few times I agree with the statement of these relics being worthless. The alchemy coin is just the most useless relic in the original Shovel Knight. Yeah, it gets you more money on smaller enemies, but it's just not worth using. Although I do find it ironic that the alchemy coin's the one that is considered the most useless. Like, I would figure the alchemist would find that useful, but I guess it's like something, something, something can create his own gold, something, something, something. As I mentioned during King Knight stage, though, this portion of the stage is one that's not really a problem for Plague Knight compared to Shovel Knight, because as Shovel Knight you have to actually follow the whims of these barrels going back and forth, but as Plague Knight you can just glide over most of it thanks to things like the float bursts and the bomb bursts. When you can do things like this, I really enjoy Plague Knight's campaign, and I wish you had more stages you could do moments like this in. Yeah, but that's mostly just because of some of the other level design being very enclosed in versus the Explodatorium's very open ceiling nature. But that said, actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever really looked into, like, the speedrun differences for Plague of Shadows in particular. So let me... speedrun.com... Shovel Knight... Alright, looks like... yeah, Plague of Shadows is shorter than main campaign. That makes sense. Either way, since we got the Alchemy Relic, we can give that to Chester for the Staff of Surging. Rise into the air with a striking attack. Or surging attack. This is interesting in that it's basically Plague Knight's Shoryuken, and it does some damage, but what makes it really interesting is that it's one of the few sub-weapons he gets that you can actively use for your mobility. So you now technically, if you use both of his main jumps and his bomb bursts, and then that, you have essentially a very far-reaching quadruple jump that can, with the proper jumps locations, reach probably up to the top of the screen. Not to mention it gives you some mad horizontal distance if you use it correctly. It's great. This, alongside the Big Boom, are the sub-weapons you're going to see me use the most with Plague Knight. The big thing is, and I sometimes fall into this trap myself, you're not exactly invincible during the Surging Strike. You can get damaged, especially by spikes, so make sure you don't, like, accidentally Shoryuken yourself into a spiked ceiling or other hazard. It can get you through enemies, just not like, say, projectiles and all that. If there's something that I do really like about playing Plague Knight, though, and you've seen me do it a little bit already thus far, and you're going to see it very much against the mini-boss coming up here, his playstyle in combination with the component powder in particular kind of echoes in the same vein as that one sound weapon that Shovel Knight had, the green orb that bounced up and down, in that you can get a lot of hits in on enemies very quickly. And in particular, it can really speed up mini-bosses like this guy, the potion thrower, who then becomes a berserk beast that walks left and right. To the point where, as Shovel Knight, you're probably going to have like 3 or 4 laps against this guy when he goes back and forth in his beast form. He's probably going to be lucky to get a full lap and a half in as Plague Knight. It's kind of ridiculous. And they're very aware of that because at times the most annoying boss fights for Plague Knight are the ones that move around a lot and are very resistant to getting pinned against walls or getting comboed like that. Mind you, to begin with, Shovel Knight's main difficulty is almost always in the stages rather than the boss fights. The times where the bosses are at their most tense are if you're doing any of the specialty feat runs, like New Game Plus, doing a stage deathless, all that. And I'll talk more about the individual feats that the Plague Knight campaign has down the road, because every single campaign has their own unique feat set. But like I mentioned before, I've only gotten a full feat completion set on Shovel Knight himself. Mostly because his was the moveset that definitely meant the most to me, I guess, in a way, or at least computed with me the most, because he's the most like a Belmont and Mega Man. Like, even Spectre Knight, with how much he, when we get to playing as him, you'll see this, emanates Zero from the X games. I just never felt the urge to get all the feats for him. Speaking of feats, that reminds me, that's why we watched the entire Mona dance last time. I wanted to just for story reasons as well, but if you watch the entire thing, you get the feat and achievement Creep. You can just mash the button to get out of that earlier, though. And I actually had to take a brief moment break there to go record a new piece of footage for this, because I forgot to show something off in this level, I realized, as soon as I was about to go into that tangent. There is a new part of this level they added for Plague Knight that isn't actually, like, part of a level, so to speak, but it's just something I wanted to show off, and I'm going to show off the equivalents to it in Plague and King Knight's own campaigns as well. It's something that all three of them have in some form, and that's at the end of the level, so we'll talk about that, and you'll see the jump cut when we get there. Also kind of surprised they didn't do a new version of Plague Knight's Explodatorium theme when you're playing as him, just to be like, yeah, it's his level kind of deal. I guess that would make it seem weird that they didn't do a new version for all of the songs, so that's why they kind of focus on just having, like, I think 15, 16-ish new songs per character at a minimum. It does definitely stick out a little bit, though, as a missed opportunity. Not that there's many of those overall across the legacy that is Shovel Knight, because what is that? 5 years for the main game, 2 full spin-offs out at this point? Alongside the Treasure Trove exclusive fighting mode and God knows how many appearances in other indie games. Shovel Knight's definitely, like, overall the poster boy for indie games, I'd say, overall. At least the positive poster boy. The negative poster boy is probably Beck from Mighty No. 9. Or, what other negative, like, indie game for Kickstarter stuff especially? Is there, like, that Yogg's Cast situation from about a decade ago now, I think? I can't really think of other ones. Either way, going on to back to the game. We're coming up on the boss fight, and wait, if we're playing as Playing, who's the boss fight here gonna be? But first, let's show off that new footage I actually had to go record really quickly. You can break this lock over here on the side to find Plague Knight's room, and this actually unlocks another feat. Get out of my room. There's something I actually don't show off here, by the way. I do like how they have the original sprite mask for Plague Knight there on the top right of that little closet. That grate there on the top left, if you use, like, the lob casing or the float one, you can break it. It shows, like, a skeleton for the minions for Plague Knight, and that picture gets filled in on New Game Plus on the top of the screen to be a certain lady. I hear footsteps. Someone's near. Leave me alone. Show yourself, Plague Knight. Your trickery will not stop me. Trickery? The fruits of my research are no mere trick. Boom! Now let's have a lesson, shall we? I promise. It'll be enlightening. Boss fight of the Exploratorium is Shovel Knight himself, and he plays like a player. He'll jump and use the Shovel Strike in several ways, but he also will use his own sub-weapons. Namely, he has access to the Flare Wand, Phase Locket, the Throwing Anchor, the Warhorn, and the Chaos Sphere. So be careful about range, because he has a lot more range than you immediately think. You can destroy the floor here, but it doesn't really serve much purpose, because you don't have any of the big bombs we ourselves had during the boss fight as Shovel Knight. But you do need to be careful about one thing, and that's about after a fourth of his health is removed, he will use that one E-Core to restore his health, but he only uses it like once or twice max, and I guess he does have an invisible MP gauge of sorts that eventually runs out, and at that point, he just relies on his Shovel Strike. This is an interesting concept, and all 3 of the campaigns do this in some form that I find interesting. I just wish we had more original stuff like this throughout the campaign. And I do like the boss fight theme here, although I think this might just be the Plague Knight battle theme now that I think about it, but it's been a little bit, okay? Man, I like how he drops the money upon defeat. That's a nice touch. Cheap shot! Thought you'd get away with your essence, huh? Ha ha! Sleeping like a blue baby. Now take a good nap. I had to stop by the Exploratorium to set my addle-brained minions in order. And you'll never believe who was there, wrecking my lab. Shovel Knight? Impossible! You read my mind! I don't know, it's weird. From my limited interaction with him, he just seems to love busting up glassware. I love that line. Alright. I want to hold on to as much money as I can for right now and not spend any. Because now that we're at this point in the game, and depending on the stages you beat here, you can gain access to the Armor Outpost, which is we're gonna need some more money there, frankly. Plus, there's more money coming anyway, because now that we've beaten the first stage, that said, we also have access to our first major optional boss. Let's go give them a greeting. I thought I heard someone. Hey, you with the bird mask. I know all about you. You're a legendary alchemist. I'm a hero too, I'll have you know. A hero in training, of course. You look like someone I can trust, so I'll let you in on a huge secret. I have a crush on a girl. You know how to brew love potions, right? How about this? If I can beat you in a friendly sparring match. I don't have time to play around with you, kid. Ah, come on, you big stick in the mud. If you win, I'll tell you my funniest joke. As a humor appreciator, I must do this. Reese can be slightly troublesome because he's airborne a lot of the time, jumping and throwing his boomerangs about as they bounce around the screen. If you get him locked into a corner as Plague Knight, he's not a big deal. But be careful of him all the same. If you're not good at tracking onto other objects besides the main boss, this could be a tough one. His kicks are probably the easier thing to avoid, despite me taking more hits from him from them there than anywhere else. And as I mentioned during the Shovel Knight campaign, this is the first instance we've seen of what is a Director for a Day character, which for backing this game for a certain amount of money, you could put an OC or a new character into the game as an optional boss fight or something along those lines. We're going to see a couple of those over the next couple parts, actually. In particular, his creator is Danny D. Henderson Jr., also known as Seizui. This character is more or less just his OZ and shows up in a couple of other Kickstarter projects, such as Indivisible. And I might cover that other game at some other point. We'll see. Well, you beat me fair and square. Guess I'm gonna have to woo my beloved the old-fashioned way. Ah, win some, lose some. Well, whatever. It's telling a joke time. How many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh? 10 tickles! 10 tentacles? 10 tickles! Oh, how devious. Yeah, it's a Ray's original. Just remember, Knight's Code, 55th vow, mirth makes worth. And for doing that, you get the music sheet for his battle theme, as well as some extra cash. Call it a hunch, he might be more important in the Spectre Torment campaign. We'll get to that eventually. But now we can access the armor outpost itself, where we have some interesting things to do. Mercy to Mercy, he's calculating trajectories. I love watching him work. He's always right on target. Oh, just in time, I've set our coordinates directly to a faraway trove of treasure and armaments. Best of all, it's completely unguarded. I want to believe you, Percy, but our last direct flight was directly into the ocean. I can't afford another set of waterlogged bombs. Fear not, friend, I've quadruple-checked my numbers. I just need to change out the torsion rod. That's a cheap fix, only 50 cipher coins. A pittance for our institution, yes? Not yet. Cause thankfully, there are exactly 6 cipher coins here, and we have 44. So if you've gotten every cipher coin thus far, you're probably going to be able to access it as soon as we grab these 6. And it might seem like you're able to, but you actually cannot get on top of the background here, or the buildings here, because we are technically behind the fence. Also, hi again, Shovel Knight. They're kind of vague about when this game takes place in relation to Shovel Knight's own campaign. It takes place both during, slightly beforehand, slightly after in some instances. It's kind of weird. Just in time. Time to say all the dialogue again, but I'm gonna say yes this time. Excellent. I'll send for the pod. We'll be soaring in no time. Perfect. Now that's one beautiful torsion rod. Hop aboard and the spoils are as good as yours. I'll take it. I think he missed. It's Plague Knight! Now's our chance, everyone get him! Percy couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. You're cornered. Lay down your chemical weapons and come quietly. Oh, quiet, he says. Total silence. Boom! So now we have a bit of a mini-boss against a bunch of knights. They will slowly edge towards you and then do a jump slash. They can also do a just normal slash type. And there's 3 variants of them. Silver, bronze, and gold. Silvers are the weakest. Bronze have a bit more HP, and gold I think have an extra attack as well as the most HP. With that said, you're just mobbed by about 8 to 10 of them total. This isn't too hard. As long as you can get some good air and throw your bombs downwards, you're probably going to survive this no problem. The bigger threat's probably if you don't have any of the tonics going at the moment, because then you might be low enough on health. Also, I should probably mention the health with the tonics is a little weird because you can overheal with them and just use your extras as healing items at any point in time, but it only restores 1 HP. And if you're, say, not at max health when you use a tonic, you're still going to be lacking that amount of health when you get them maxed out. So if you're at 4 health out of the 5 and you use 5 potions, you're going to be at 9 health.
Everyone knows the bomb is mightier than the sword. Minions, join me. The armor outpost is ours. Whoa, you hearing that rumble?
Well, now it's doubly ours. They all left.
It's the aerial anvil. Looks like a full load of cowards. Let's take their things.
And now we have access to the area itself. We can even talk to Chester here.
Psst. Hey, green guy, I'm loaded with deals that'll blow you away.
Wanna have a look? We can get an extra thing here, the big tonic bag, to double our total amount of potions. Which is pretty handy. In fact, you even may have noticed during the time we saw Plague Knight's room, I even had that. Hello, bird person. All hail the Trouble King. Who? You've never heard of the Trouble King? Half trout and half apple. Oh, he gets quite upset if you say it like Troople. He doesn't need troops, more like counsel or doubtful. If you ever visit his grotto, hold your chalice aloft. The Trouble King will appear and bless you with a sacred dance.
Dance? That's what Mona was doing earlier. Maybe he could show me how?
As it happens, I have been entrusted to sell Trouble chalices to believers. Would you like one? And indeed, I would. Because this unlocks a certain other shop for us. But before we go, we might as well go check out what's going on with Mr. Hat over in his shop as Plague Knight.
Ah, so you're the one who's scaring off all my customers. It's enough to make a haberdasher flip his lid. Do you do hoods? I could use a blast-proof lining on mine.
You miscreants! Hoods? That's not even a proper hat. No structure, no support, no flair.
Hats are a waste of felt, old man. They fall off in the wind. Hoods are objectively more utilitarian.
How dare you, sirrah! I demand satisfaction. Have at you! Master Hat's attacks are entirely dependent on which of the 2 hats he's wearing. When he's wearing the spiked one, he's going to be more melee-based, doing slashes and zips across the screen, throwing some spears in the air that he'll then rain back down. When he's wearing his red poofier hat, he's going to be more long-distance focused, throwing one of the spears that he threw out with the physical hat at you, throwing plates directly at you, and even some glassware that'll just be lobbed at you. He can also pogo jump, very much like Scrooge. I want to say he might have a 3rd hat, but if he does, I genuinely don't remember because this fight doesn't really tend to go on long enough for that loop to happen. He is often invincible when he's swapping his hats, though, so watch out for that. And hey, we get some extra gold out of that, and a pretty good amount, too.
Wow, for a geezer, you should put up a fight. How'd you get all these moves?
Ah, well, my hats aren't mere fashion accessories. Each one bestows great powers upon me.
Whoa, powers? I'll take 10 of your finest hats, then.
Sadly, the power's unique to yours, truly. They'd only make you look powerful and classy.
Ah, blast. Well, see you later, then.
Indeed. And hey, some extra money and another music sheet, so that's even more money. And we're going to be using a surprising amount of that relatively shortly now that we have the Trouble Chalice. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 5, we're going to go pay a visit to said Trouble King, and see what stage we head on to after that. See you guys then.